All right, so before we push to Heroku, before we deploy, there's a few things we need to do within our application. So one thing is the config file we have, the default.json. This is going to be for our local environment, these values. I'm going to keep the same values in production. However, we need to create a new JSON file for production. So we'll create a new file here called production.json. And I'm going to just copy these values and put them in here. And typically you'll have a different database for production. These will usually be different values, but there's really no reason for us to do it since this isn't going to be an actual production application, so I'm going to keep the same values. All right, now in my .getignore file, along with the node modules folders, we want to add config/default.json because we don't need to push that to Heroku. All right, so I'm just going to save that and close. All right, now when it comes to using React as our client side, when we push to production, we no longer use the React dev server. That's for development. So what we need to do is build out our static assets, and the way that we can do that manually is by just going into the client folder. And we can run, and you guys don't have to do this, I'm just showing you real quick. So we can do npm run build. And what that's going to do is it's going to, as you can see, create an optimized production build of static assets. All right, so if we look in the client folder now, we have a build folder and we have this index.html that looks like absolute gibberish. And this is what we actually need to load when we push to production. Okay, this is the file that we need to load, and it's basically the gateway to everything. All right, now there's two options we have when it comes to Heroku. We could build it out just like we just did and push that, or we could actually build it on the server using a post build script, which I think is a better idea because then we don't even have to worry about doing an npm run build. It'll do it on the server. So I'm going to just delete the build folder that I just created and cd back into the root here. All right, now to create a build script, we're going to go into the server package.json file, and we're going to add an npm script here. So let's add a comma at the end, and let's call this, it has to be called Heroku-post build. Okay, so that it runs post build after we push. And there's a few things we have to do here. We have to first set the production environment to false by doing npm _ config _ production, and we want to set that to false. And that might seem a little weird, but the reason we're doing that is because we can't run the React build script if production is true. So we're just temporarily setting it to false here. Okay, it'll be put back to production afterwards. So in addition to that, we need to build out the dependencies, or I should say install the dependencies on the client side. Okay, because we're not pushing the node modules folder. So we have to do an npm install, but we want to do a -- prefix because we're doing that in the client folder, not in the root. All right, then we're going to do an double ampersand, and we want to run npm run build on the server. So let's do npm run build, but we want to add -- prefix and client so that it runs in the client folder. Okay, and that's it. That's our build script. That should run once we push to Heroku. So let's save that. Now, if we go to our server.js, it's not set up to actually serve the build file, the index.html that I showed you. So we have to set that up. Now, this right here, this route that just says API running, you definitely want to get rid of this. If you don't, then it's just going to show that. So make sure you get rid of that if you still have it there. And then I'm just going to bring in my path module, which is just a core NODEJS module to manipulate file paths. So let's say require path. And then we're going to go underneath these routes, underneath all the API routes. Make sure you do it underneath and not above. And we want to serve static assets in production. Okay, so we're going to check for production. So I'm going to say if process.env.node_env is equal to production, then we want to go ahead and first of all set the static folder. Okay, in Express we can easily set a specific folder to be our public folder or static folder. And we want to set, we're going to do app.use, and we want to set that index.html inside client/build to be our static file. All right, so we need to set that build folder as the folder. So let's do express.static, and we'll go ahead and specify that we want the client/build folder to be our static folder. All right, now we want to serve that index.html file. So we're going to create a route. We're going to say app.get to asterisk. So basically anything aside from these API routes up here, then we want to go ahead and load. Let's go ahead and say res dot, and we're going to use send file because we just want to load that index.html file, and I'm going to use the path module and then resolve here, which is just a cleaner way of loading it. So we're going to go from the current directory, so _dir name, and we want to go into the client folder, into the build folder, and we want to load the index.html. Okay, so that should do it. And again, make sure you get rid of that route we had up here to the index. So I'm going to save this, and hopefully I didn't make any mistakes because we're gonna go ahead and deploy in the next video. Also, make sure you have this as the port. Okay, process env port, because that's what Heroku is going to look at. The 5000 is if that doesn't exist. Okay, so that's it. Let's go ahead and deploy in the next video.